This is Finn Morrison with Fashion Worker Cooperatives. Today we're going to talk about employee ownership. There are three forms of employee ownership. First, the employee stock ownership plan. Second, the employee ownership trust. And third, the worker cooperative. We will deal with them one at a time. The employee stock ownership plan is basically a pension plan. Similar to a 401k plan, the difference is that in a 401k plan, you have cash. In an employee stock ownership plan, you have employee owned shares in the company. Because it is a pension plan, it is heavily regulated under the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. This is to ensure that when the employee retires, funds will be there. The shares that the employees own are not held by the employees individually, but they are held in a trust on behalf of the employees. So, in other words, when it comes time to have annual meeting in the company, the trustee will vote the shares for the employees in their capacity as shareholders, not as in their capacity as employees. And there could definitely be conflict between those two roles, but they will always vote them according to the interests of the shareholders. The shares are held in individual accounts so that when the employee retires, the shares will be sold and the cash will be paid out to the employee. Because they are shares, they also earn dividend just like all other shares, and that means that the employee will accumulate those profits over the time that he's employed in the company, and the shares will go up and down in value just like all other shares. So in other words, the employee will share in both profit and equity. Statistics on how many of these employee stock ownership plans is a little shaky. Some sources say around 7,000, some say as many as 10,000, but that's the scale of what we are dealing with here. The reason employers want to have employee stock ownership plans are primarily as a part of the employee's compensation to have them increase productivity and also to retain as a way of retaining talent in the company. Some examples of employee stock ownership plans are Publix. Publix is an employee-owned, 100% employee-owned grocery store chain in the Southeast. Johnny's Selected Seeds is also a 100% owned employee-owned company, as is King Arthur Flour. King Arthur Flour has elected to become also democratically controlled. Most other companies, the control remains with the trustee because the shares are held in trust on behalf of the employees. Unlike the employee stock ownership plan, an employee ownership trust is not a pension plan, and therefore it is very simple to set up. Unlike the employee stock ownership plan, the shares do not need to be kept in individual accounts because the trust simply owns all the shares, and the employees are getting paid out of the earnings on the shares. So in other words, the trust in many ways functions just as a nonprofit company for the benefit of the employees. There are two ways an employee ownership trust can be set up. It can be an owner who wants to retire and just set up the trust and transfer all the shares into it, and then the earnings on the shares will pay off the note. And once the owner has been fully paid, he can then sign over control of the trust to the employees, and they could run it democratically. The other way is to simply start from scratch like that, and one company has actually done that. It's a construction company in, I believe, Seattle, Washington. It's called Metis Construction, where the owner did not want to you did not want to have the responsibility of being an entrepreneur. He was totally disinterested in that. He wanted to do construction. So, in other words, now all the employees in the company are responsible for being the owners in this way. And finally, there is the worker cooperative. Worker cooperatives are companies that are owned 100% owned and controlled by their workers. They can be organized as any legal entity with operating agreements or bylaws that regulate how um, decisions are made and how profits are shared. Some states have adopted special cooperative corporation laws where all these regulations are already built in, but you do not have to organize this way. You can set up any legal entity you want and make your own rules. However, if you want to incorporate the cooperative in the name of the company, you do have to um, create a cooperative corporation. Other than that, you can operate the same way. There are, because every owner has one share and one vote, there are individual accounts in this setup, and the workers own their share directly. It's not held on behalf of anybody. The workers own them individually, and they share in the profits and the equity in the company. There aren't that many of them in the United States, but there are many in Europe. Some examples in the United States is Cooperative Home Care Associates in the Bronx. Sources vary on how many employees there are, but probably about 1,000 or maybe more. Equal Exchange is a coffee roaster and in Massachusetts. They are interesting because they also um, purchase coffee, cocoa, and other products in third world countries and pay a reasonable uh, price for the products. A Child's Care in Queens is a company that was converted from a regular ownership into a worker cooperative. And finally, in Union Cab in Madison, Wisconsin, was created by a union. The drivers were locked out. They were not on strike, they were locked out. And the union helped them set up a new company, which is now called Union Cab, and it's organized as a worker cooperative. So that was a quick overview of the three forms of employee ownership. If you have questions, I encourage you to either call me at the number on your screen or email me also at the email address on my screen. So that was a little introduction to employee ownership. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe below.